Okay, welcome back. Looks like I'm in the middle of something, and truly I am, so I'm going to explain a little bit. So I started this particular video a while ago, and these are Parker 21s, and I did the befores, the middles, getting everything apart, but in the meantime my computer had an accident, had to be kind of sent back to the factory, reset, things replaced, so lost all that video, and I still had these pens taken apart, so I figured just to kind of get the video out, break this long hiatus, I'll show you where I am, kind of talk through how we got to here, and hopefully by just showing the putting back together part, you'll kind of get a sense for what I did to take it apart. And I have a few comments about the process of getting it apart. It was a little bit difficult for at least one of the pens, and so a little word to the wise, just some things to think about as we do this particular pen. So let me just jump right in, and I'm happy to field any questions in chats or whatever if some of this is unclear, but let me show you what we have. So we have this green one and this red one over here. The red one is now fully taken apart. So basically what we could see is I had this is a pretty rough shape to begin with, but it polished up really well. So if I were to say, let's take a Parker 21 apart, let's start here, take off the cap as you would. You'll just unscrew the back barrel, and you would typically have this aerometric squeezing thing. And so this came off with a lot of soaking, a lot of heat. This was one of the touchy points where it was just hard to get off, but eventually it does come off. This is a tight friction fit. And actually on this one, because you see they're both off, this one, while I was both working with the hood and twisting this off, as I was twisting, I kind of caught this compression bar and it twists a little bit and it came off. So this little loop came out of this tube, and I'll zoom in a little bit, and on this particular one there seemed to be two little divots which kind of fit two little divots on the far end of this side of the loop. And what I ultimately wound up doing, using this for comparison as far as how deep do I set it, is kind of line them up. And I mixed up some epoxy, and I put some epoxy on the end of this, slipped it on the end of this compression bar, slipped it back in, and then just kind of let it sit there and set. And now I have it nice and set, and it's firmly well attached. But that does happen sometimes, and I think the alignment is pretty good. I mean, it's a little bit off, but by and large it's still going to hold my sack, and I can trim the sack down a little bit. But that was one point of an issue I had getting off. So when you're doing these, you're going to start to think about how deep am I going to get into the hood, kind of just flush. And if you're going to get all the way into this thing, it might be nice just to work on this first and be able to pull it off, and then move on to the hood. And so for this particular hood, I soaked it, applied heat all up and through here, and it just wouldn't come. And I was like really holding it, twisting and doing all these things, and it just would not come apart. So I ultimately just decided, you know what, I'm going to do my flushing, and I'm just going to maybe see if the other one works instead. And let me see, just to reiterate, if you're going to do some flushing, be it with this Parker 51, a Taperite, a Eversharp Fifth Avenue, anything like that, these nasal aspirators cut down a little bit to fit over this connector piece, works fantastic. So if you don't want to mess with the hood, you can't get the hood off, just flush. It'll be just fine. So there's that. And that's kind of where this one I could get to, So with the polishing, it polished up really well. And I really wish you could see the before, because these were both pretty beat up, this one especially. So just kind of nice to see one of the lower tier kind of Parker 21s clean up and look fantastic. So if I show the hood part of the red one, what we wind up having, and I'll see, and honestly I don't have the footage anymore, so I'm gonna have to make a guess on one thing, but let me just go ahead and fake it for a second. Let me see if I can put the catch ring on. So what you're going to have, and I'm not going to put the feed in, we'll just imagine it there, is you have this, and the nib and feed would be, you know, sticking out of here. So this part is the connector, and it kind of holds in place this two-piece ring system, and then in here is the feed. It's not a collector, it's nothing special. It's just a cheap little feed. So Parker didn't do much. They kept it cheap with the Parker 21. But ultimately, this one, I don't remember if it was just soaking or soaking in dry heat or just dry heat, but ultimately is able to lefty-loosey, righty-tighty out. And I'll leave it here for a second. We'll address the hood in a minute. What you find on here, see if I can focus, is the catch ring. This kind of flat, wide catch ring, a little bit different than the kind of scooped out version of the Parker 51, but you'll get a ring just by itself, kind of like a super thin washer. You have one, and then you have this part, which has a little edge on it that looks like this ring. So it's like ring, wide part, and what seems like it should be another ring, but it's not. It is this kind of slanted surface that, if you flip it over, just shows kind of openness, like a ring around it near a core. I'm not sure about the engineering of it, what's really going on in here, but that's what it looks like. And so the part I had to guess on, because I don't remember and I don't want to take another one apart just to figure it out, is, you know, where does this spare ring go? Does it go on first and then the ring? And that seemed to be a little bit more slippery. When it went back on, like, it was a little bit touchy, but I'm not sure that it matters. As long as you get it lined up, tightened down, it will take care of itself. But as I'm playing around with it, I just kind of liked it for some reason. Putting the thicker piece on first with that little extra lip down, put that on second, and then tighten that down. So that's what I'm going to instruct you to do. And for some reason, I just like that better, and I don't entirely know why, but I'm going to say that. So let me take this apart, zoom back out, and show you what this nib and feed situation is. So here's the feed, here's the nib, here's the little breather tube. So you'll see it look just like this. Big fat round. You'll have this much more aggressive kind of widow's peaked hood, and a much more semi-hooded nib on this. Still hooded, it's still mostly covered, but it is a bit more of an aggressive tip. And I will acknowledge, and I said this in the other bit of the video, but this red one had a little bit of a chip at the tip of it. So what I wound up doing is, as I did my polishing, I just rounded it over to kind of cosmetically make it look tapered again. So this one's not quite as pointed, not quite as aggressive, and that's because I had to polish it off. Otherwise I'd leave a chipped tip at the end. So it looks a little bit more like a Parker 51, but not a bad job. I think it looks pretty good overall. Anyway, so that's what you'll see. And I used, and again, I wish I hadn't made this mistake and messed up my computer, but I used my little knockout rod, which I've described before. Like, you know, it's wide up top, narrow at the bottom, and I just use drill bits to kind of ream it out and give it a taper, so that when I just kind of put some tissue in it, I could set that in there, take a knockout rod, and just hammer out this feed, because what it looks like is it's in there, and you just kind of see the feed in there, and you can just knock it out from the front. And see if I can get that back out. There we go. And I still need to do a video. That was my video of actually showing me knocking it out for some people, so I might just do a quick one when I do my next one, just to show it as like a 5-minute video. But you'll get this, and there's no collector, just a classic simple feed, fairly short, has a little breather tube, no biggie, because you're going to aerometrically fill this, so that helps. And then you get this stainless steel or their titanium little nib, and just kind of like this. Not kind of like this, it looks like this. This is it. Yep. Nothing super special. And this is when I'm gonna, since it's kind of hooded, I'm gonna make sure before we do this, and it looks like it's a little bit off. You can see this right tip as it's upside down is a little bit further down. So I may pause just before we put it back together just to make sure everything is in alignment, and that may have helped just there. So actually, let's do something first before I do that. So that's what you're gonna do, and you can soak, do your polishes, and I did the classic. I did my micro mesh, I did my polishes, and everything came out super well. And of course, these are the two caps. One's kind of scooped out, not scooped out, but a little bit domed, has a little bit of a crest running up through the top. This one has a little more of the arrow. And I'm pretty sure this one went with the red, this one went with the green. At this point, shoot, who knows? I probably screwed them up, but you know, they're interchangeable, so I'm not too worried about it. But I'll stick with the red and the green. I'm pretty sure that's the way it went. But they're stainless steel, they polish up really well, and these are actually in good condition. And I don't know how these come off. I'm sure there's probably something up in there. I didn't bother too much because they're solid, and I just cleaned it out, and they caught well with the catch ring, so I'm not gonna mess with the top of these at all, but I'm sure they screw out in some particular way. But here we go. So let's go ahead and get the insides, let's get them re-sacked up. And this one, apparently, I don't have a breather tube for it. I think this one kind of broke in the process, and I just don't happen to have a replacement. So again, I might just leave this one semi put together. Actually, you know what? I'll wait. I'll find a breather tube so I can get it back into good condition. If I have a Junker 21 that I can't fix or it doesn't seem to be repairable, I will swap out the breather tube, and I'll just call this one done for a second so I don't overdo it and have to undo it just to get a breather tube in. So let's take this guy. Let's see what we're gonna have to do. So hood, and I think I can do this all differently. But let's go ahead and see what that is to resack. So these are, you can get these off probably Anderson pens, I can guarantee that, and maybe Independence, but these are specific silicone sacks sized for the Parker 51. And I want to say they have a little bit of a taper to them. They tend to have these nice little lines inside. And there we go. You'll just see it there. And they have this kind of neck right here, which should be sized perfectly well for Parker 51. You wouldn't have to trim these, and I don't think you have to trim it for this either, because it'll sit down in there, be on the nipple, and be flush into here. So it might be just a wee bit short in here, but I think that's going to be a good size, and I'm not going to cut it. So this is a chance for me to tell you one other thing you're going to be getting. So if you do Parker 21s, Parker 51s, maybe see if you can find it in a small size, but this is a silicone adhesive. You could use shellac between this and the nipple, but being a super smooth surface, the shellac doesn't probably consistently hold. This might actually break free because it's so pliable and it's so smooth that it's not ideal to use shellac for this. So this is why I bought this honking tube of silicone adhesive, and it's great. I mean, if you just want to start using silicone sacks in general to increase the longevity of your repair, so you don't have to go in and replace a latex sack in a few years, this might be a good option. They're a little more pricey, but they're probably one and done for probably the bulk of your life. So it may be worth it, just to think about it. But here it is. And I will say a little bit goes a long way, and it can get a little bit messy. So I've got a paper towel, I've got some toothpicks, I'm gonna grab one. And what I found with this is it just wants to move itself out of the container. So I'm gonna undo it, and you'll see it kind of already wants to start snaking itself out. So I'm just gonna grab a little bit onto my toothpick, no big deal, and quickly cap this because it just makes a mess. It just wants to expand out. So got a little bit there, and all we really have to do is just treat it like the shellac, right? We're just going to slop it onto the nipple. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. I think that was a little bit out of focus, but I'm just going to do the thing we typically do, and I'm going to put much more of this on here. In fact, maybe I can get a little bit more that squeezed out. Did it? No. I'll just put it all up in here. Okay. And of course, we're going to take the sack, slide over top, going to smear anything that comes out back into the crack, and just move this around, let it get coated, and that's it. That is just like anything else. We're going to take our cage, we'll see how it fits, and if a little glue gets up on that, I'm okay with that too, because this one was less tight, a little easier to get off, so a little silicone gets in there, I'm totally fine. And yeah, it got almost to the end, but not quite. So we can just let that set, and let's see, how long does it take? I haven't actually, full strength in 12 to 24 hours, so this will be a good time for me to just set this aside and come back tomorrow to finish up the video. And what can we do now? Yeah, so I think this might go ahead and be a time for me to pause if we're going to worry about the upfront part, how we're going to get the nib and feedback in, and this will let me have a second to recheck my alignment, and I'll come right back and we'll kind of do the front end and put it back together, and then we'll give it a day to kind of cure, and we'll do our writing sample. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, let's go ahead and see if we can get this nib in, and before we do, let's take a second, see if I can zoom in. Hopefully it'll show you something about what it says. But you can see it says Parker, and hopefully you can see it. But it does say right under Parker, it says Octanium. Give it a little bit right there. I think it says USA, and it's got a 53 date code, so this is made in 1953, and I honestly can't see it now, and I don't remember what it was. I don't know if there's any dots or anything around it. Maybe we can see it on the big screen on a computer, because I don't want to take my loop just to find out again, and loops in the other room. So it does say 53, but we have a nice shiny Octanium nib, basically stainless steel, you know. So let's go ahead and see how hard this is going to be to get back in. Another reason to maybe reconsider if you actually want to knock the darn thing out. So, I mean, unless you have like a chipped nib, something's wrong with it, you need to switch that out. Flushing might be the best way to go, to be quite honest. Let's go ahead, and I went ahead and put the breather tube in. See if we can start sliding it in. Try to get our alignment set up early. I think that looks pretty good. Zoom in just to see if that helps you guys. And push. Yep. Push a little bit more. And that looks pretty good. I mean, there's a limitation to what I think our fingers can do. And you know, if this were a little bit, if this were the unadulterated hood, it'd actually have a little bit more of a point up to here. So I think that's actually pretty good in terms of getting the hoodedness onto it. So the bottom looks pretty good. Maybe it's a hair off. See if I can, but it's subtle. I think that looks pretty good. And the alignment was good initially. I'll take my loop and double check before we do the writing sample while this silicone, oops, I didn't realize that, it freaked out. Whoa, is setting up, but I'll double check and just make sure that looks tuned. But overall, I think that's pretty good. So let's go ahead and get this arranged so the whole thing's setting up. But I'm going to go ahead and plop this ring with the little extra lip, or this kind of concave or sloping section facing down. I'm going to put the extra ring right on top of it. And I will slide that in. A little bit of a backwards turn to see if I can get it set. And then, oh, this is going to be, yeah, we just turn and get it cinched down there nicely. And that's nice. I guess the good thing about this is, since we're putting the nib feet in, we're not having that whole setting where the collector and everything is that you see on the Parker 51. We don't have to worry about realign, 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 make sure the hood and everything is good. Yeah, that's pretty good. Once this is set up, I can have a little bit more tighter grip. Actually, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can do that anymore. That's pretty finger tightened. And I feel like this does spin a little bit, but it's not loose. It's not up and down loose. It can rotate, so it's free to rotate, but that would be it. So now we just, yeah, sweet. Let that cure. And I was able to find myself an extra breather tube. I thought I had a broken 21, so I was like, oh, perfect. Grabbed it, put it in, and I went ahead and put this sac protector on it. So maybe we can ink both of these puppies up and give them a try tomorrow. So it looks like it'll be Christmas for Parker 21s. And we'll just leave that there. And we'll see in a little bit. Hopefully this video is not terrible. Luckily it might be on the shorter side unless I ramble too much, but we'll come back, do a writing sample, and I have everything I'm going to do for the next video off to the side to tease a little bit and make up for the long absence. So we'll see you in a little bit. Alright, and welcome back to the very end of the video. I'm kind of at a different location. I'm trying to capture the light a little bit better than my little room was doing, but even now it's not that great. So if you can't see, this is the green one, this is the red one, and I figure I'd go ahead and just do the quick filling and writing section and kind of show what I plan to do next. So let's go ahead and just show them a little closely. Here's the red one with its nice little more specific arrow clip. Pop them off. And yeah, you can kind of see the red a little bit. This is the one, if you recall, that I did kind of fix a chipped hood section, so it's a little bit more truncated with a lot more of that nib sticking out. And everything's nice and shiny, nice and smooth. Yeah, the color is hard to see, but this plastic took a really nice polish. As you can just kind of see, it's very shiny and sleek. And then we have our fresh silicone sac. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And of course, this cage is pretty mobile. It can come off and come on, so I like that about this particular pen. And so you can do the close-up of a nib. How just kind of sharp and aggressive that is. It's probably going to be a fine or extra fine. And the cap is just, is there texture to it? No, it's just a smooth lustraloy. It has Parker right there with this little stylized Parker arrow or Parker lined arrow piercing that circle, kind of like a halo. And what else does it say? I'm not sure that zooming in is going to do too very much. Yeah, there you go. It does say Parker 21 right there. And it says Parker again. And it looks like made in USA, so actually zooming in did help. We have a nice little metal finial. I'll go ahead and show that arrow clip one more time. And since I've got the zoom in, let's go ahead and just kind of see the nice chromed instructions. And again, one of the differences between a Parker 51, actually this one does. It actually does say 21. I was kind of used to them not saying anything, just saying Parker. But it does have a 21 on there with the typical filling instructions. And this one says to press how many times? Because there's some dating capacity, at least for Parker 51 aerometrics, where it tells you 4 to 5 times or 4 to 6 times, or it tells you a little bit about how many times to press. And this one particularly says, sorry, I kind of freaked it out by moving in front of it, and it says just press 3 times. So this is a 3 press filler. Let's go ahead and show the green one that belonged to CM Blair at some point. I hope that green comes through. But this is another variation of that Parker 21 clip. It's kind of a convex, simple clip. Doesn't have anything that would tell you it's Parker or otherwise. Nice metal finial. It has a little bit more of a cap band. Saying, let's see if we can zoom on that guy. Does it say, this is Parker? This one does not seem to have a 21 on it, just straight, simple Parker. And of course, this one has the classic hood that's a little bit more pointed. This is unadulterated, so it does come a little bit more towards the tip. And they both have that bulbous feed. And if we take this one off, again, nice clear silicone sac. The one that I had to glue back on, use epoxy to get back. And Parker pen, blah blah blah. Press, ribbed, 3 times also. But this one does not have Parker 21. It doesn't even say Parker. Yeah, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but I'll just kind of do the angle. But it just has filling instructions. It doesn't really even say Parker. So I wonder if that's going to be a later particular model. So let's throw that back on there. And let me go ahead and grab an ink. Zoom back out. Whoa. Knock my camera a little bit. You'll see some stuff I've got on the table here just for some other stuff. But here we go. I'm going to go ahead and use my diamine ink. I really like this Aurora Borealis. And I don't seem to have one. I forgot one. But let's go ahead and ink up the green one just to go with it. I'm not going to ink both up, I don't think. Let's go ahead and see how 3, 1, 2, 3. I think you can hear the bubbles. You can see how nicely full that got. That got pretty much up to the tip. So that's pretty good fill for these aerometrics. I like that. Grab the body, the barrel. I'm going to be a bit messy. I know I forgot my towel, so I'm just going to rub it on my finger for a second because I don't want to make another break. I can clean up, and it's okay. So let's just chat out the Parker 21 for a second. There we go. And let's see how it writes. Parker 21, let's get that flowing. Okay, we're there. Parker 21. So I have some notes off to the side. Let me just read it a little bit. So these are what they would consider the cheaper school pens, right? This is marketed toward kids or people who didn't want to pay the full price for a Parker 51. These are cheaper in the fact that they had a lower quality plastic. They had stainless steel nibs and stainless steel caps. And these, definitely let me zoom in, realizing how far away that is. Sorry for this positioning. There we go. We'll figure it out. But these were initially $5 pens. So definitely much more affordable and giving you the Parker 51 look at a better price. And that's compared to the 51 one that, you know, started out around $12.50 to $15 for baseline models and got all the way up to like $75 to $100 for some of the more gold, the more fanciful kind of thing. So the Parker 51, definitely the investment compared to the nice $5 Parker 21. What else do I have written down? I'm not going to make this too very long. but these came out in 1948, and the Mark 1 lasted up until about 1952. They had a couple issues with it. What did I write down? The feed seemed to be a little too exposed. I'm not sure if this is a Mark 1 or Mark 2. Honestly, I'm figuring that these are probably Mark 2 based on the way the section is made. But these had issues with ink drying on the exposed feed. And what else did I do? On the feed, yeah, just a larger hole down here. So maybe it's Mark 1. I don't know. That is pretty darn big. When I think of a Parker 51, that's usually much more narrow. But I really should do another video and see if I can make a distinction between Mark 1 and Mark 2 at some point. So in 1952, they came out with the MK2 Mark 2. And what I just have written down is they closed the gap here. They made that a little bit smaller, tighter, and they put the nib and feed into the section, which this is what makes me think that both of these pens are Mark II, because we had the feeds within the hooded section here. And so it'd be interesting for me to see what I have in my inventory to see if I can find a Mark 1 to see how the feeds are different, and maybe I'll do a follow-up video just to kind of show them side by side. So this is probably a Mark II, so that is a narrower gap, and I'd be curious to see what that looks like. And just, I'll say this out loud, I don't need to write this extra paragraph, but these are very popular. They were a very affordable pen. Let's see, later on they did kind of give it a little bit more of a luxurious treatment. They increased a couple of the tiers. The 21s have a gold cap, gold clip with the deluxe models, and then the custom. So the clip was deluxe, so stainless steel with a gold clip was the deluxe, and the gold cap was a custom. And this is called, I even have a thing here where they introduced this called the ridge clip. So I almost now bet maybe this guy is a little bit earlier than this blue one, because this has a Parker Aero, so maybe they were sticking with that. And then a later introduction was this ridge clip, just to simplify it and probably make things even cheaper, to be honest with you. Stamp that out and boom, you've got a simple clip. And then I'll say that these were phased out in 1965, primarily as the cartridge systems, Parker 61, etc., Parker 75, kind of came into being, and they started taking over. So this had a pretty good run. I'd say 48 to 65. Let's do some math in front of you guys. So 10, 12, so a good 17-year run as a very affordable, big share of the market, Parker 21. And I think, I didn't write it down, but I think I remember seeing that at some point this did become like the bulk of the Parker sales. And I don't know if they qualify that as the bulk of the affordable pens, but I think the Parker 21 did wind up overtaking the Parker 51 and Parker 45, kind of some later edition pens. So this was a very good pen for Parker, probably one of the last super great pens for their market. Let's just go ahead and do the quick one. I may have to work on these tines a little bit because it does seem to have a little skippiness, but let's do the sentence. It is writing pretty smooth. Actually, that's really good. I'd say that's a fine line, and I'll zoom in a second to show you guys exactly what this looks like. But that's pretty darn smooth. I'd say it's a fine line. It's keeping up with some fast scribbles, and as I kind of lay it down, it's a little bit wet actually for such a fine line. And you know, it's a diamine ink, of course, but fine line. There's a little bit of skip there, but let's see. I mean, otherwise, it seems to be keeping up pretty well with that just kind of quick writing. Let's go reverse. Takes it down a little bit of a notch, but also not very bold at this point. But it's not terribly, it's not scratchy. It's not smooth, but it's not scratchy. It's just kind of a little more digging into the paper, but it doesn't really lay down a significant line. So I would not really call it a reverse writer. When I flip it over, it comes right back. And let's see if we can take it through a couple little figure eights. There's a springiness to it. It offers a little bit of, not resistance, but some spring, but this is not a flexing nib. You can squeeze a little bit of variation out of it, but it's more for the sake of just bounciness than flexibility. But it does kind of spring back, and I can go back to writing with it. So pretty good nib overall. And I would say, as a good pen, I mean, we saw how good this capacity was, just how full that got, and we'll squeeze that back into the ink section a little bit. So with this kind of fine line, easy size, this is definitely a good size pen, fitting into my hand with some extras. So one thing I didn't get is my ruler, but I would probably say with the kind of pens I've measured before, I think 4.5 tends to get into the crook. So this is 4.5 to 5 inches just uncapped. And so for average hands, small hands, this is going to be more than enough to hold. And for large hands, it'll still probably fit right there. So it's well sized for, I think, most hands. It's not overly girthy. It's comfortable. I don't feel like I'm crunching down on it, but it's not this big girthy pen that's really fat and hard to hold for probably a smaller pen. So I think, so for a smaller hand, I mean. So I think it's well proportioned, and you have this full big hooded section that's not slippery. It's just that kind of plastic where you can hang on to it. And, you know, granted, I'm not writing on this for hours, so I don't know what it's like if I were to get a little sweaty, but it feels comfortable. Even if I ride back on this cap catch ring, it's very low profile. I'm rolling right over it. It doesn't seem to, I don't think I'd be bothered by it if I just kind of choke up and right up here, or a little closer down, which I think I'd be more right in the middle. And that nib is nice. I like it a lot. So this is a good quality, sturdy pen. You know, it's not going to give you any prestige points for having a Parker 21, but if you're interested in just an everyday writer, a good workhorse, something with capacity, something that you can probably get affordably, and in numbers, if something happens, you can replace these easily. These abound. You can get these pretty darn cheap. So great as an intro to vintage pens, great as an intro to vintage daily carry workhorse pens, and just a great pen to have if you're collecting Parkers, Parker 51, Parker 21. It'd be good to have these guys side by side, kind of the little brother to the Parker 51. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like to be empty, just kind of see what that capacity looks like. And simple as, let's see if I can figure out the depth here. Look at all those drops. That's one squeeze. And yeah, you can empty it with pretty much one squeeze. But that, 1, 2, 3, fills right back up. This is great. I like these aerometrics a lot. Partly because they do compress, and you're really compressing that whole sack rather than just the tip, like a lever filler might sometimes just kind of compress the tip. This, you're squeezing the whole thing. And of course they do have that little bit of a breather tube to really help give that extra fill. So great filling mechanism. I do like a good quality aerometric. Let's go ahead and barrel that. I'll clean this guy up. Probably keep this one. This has an imprint. People tend to not like imprints for some odd reason, but I like this guy. And I will probably put this guy on my eBay. Maybe do a writing sample with it on my eBay page. But that reminds me, I'm going to mention something to you at the very end of the video, just for my own personal gain, I think. And I'll save that for the end in case you don't want to tune in for that. But let me show you a few things that I'm going to have coming up. I'm finally going to do it. I'm finally going to use a deoxidizer. I'm going to review this from lbepen.com. I bought this deoxidizer probably a year and a half ago. I've used it once on a couple pens. I believe it was a Conklin crescent filler, and that's on my Instagram page, which I'll mention as well. So there's a previous history of me using this that I'm going to use for several pens. I'm going to batch them together and kind of show you a process. So we have, for your consideration, this nice little swan lever filler. Zoom in to see some contrast here, but nice and black up here where the cap covers it, and the light exposed, oxygen exposed area a little more brown, and this needs a full restoration. So this is going to be a fun little swan pen, one of my favorite brands. We have this super brown. I'm excited to see if this one does anything. I think it's a Waterman, is it 52? Yeah, it's a Waterman 52. So again, super dark, nice up here, and I do apologize for the light. I need to figure out a better area for these videos now. But a Waterman 52 with probably nickel plated trim. Still got a crusty sack in there, can't even open the lever. It's got some chasing on it, and it's got a decent imprint on the inside if we see it eventually. And the Waterman 52, kind of a flexi nib that looks a little bit stubby actually. I'll have to take a look at it, but it looks like a short stubby one. But it's got the 52 flex. And this one has no previous clips or clipless cap. And then we have, what is this guy? Ah, sweet. So a little combo. This is a John Holland, slightly oxidized, a little bit darker here, and I hope you trust me that there's that line there. It's a little bit oxidized. This is a John Holland. This is a hatchet filler that pivot we're going to replace and just kind of show this bonus one as one of my filling mechanism videos. And this one, I just like John Holland. He's a Cincinnati, Ohio pen maker, and oh, if you see that nib, look at that flexibility. So I'm going to do a combo to kind of get a few of these pens cleaned up. Probably do the deoxidation and then break up the demonstrations of each pen, just kind of talk about each one a little bit in some separate videos, but these will be coming up. And then just to kind of do simple things, not to teach anything more about filling mechanisms, but just to kind of get through different examples of pens. I have some that I just want to get working on, some for me, some to kind of push on through eBay, but I have this nice Conway Stewart that has green and some marbling and some veining, which is very nice. I don't think I've done a Conway Stewart on the page before, and I have some I'd like to show. So just to show a nice pretty one cleaned up, start with that. This is a great one I saw and I jumped on online. This is a Wasp Schaefer sub-brand. It just has this kind of gold grass pattern that I just wanted to make up for lost time and show some a dazzly pen, since I kind of been away from the channel for a little bit. I just kind of show that guy cleaned up just to kind of play around. And then again, here's another John Holland. This one's going to be for me. I love that. For some reason I like John Holland, and this is just some weird little candy, I forget what they call it, but maybe like a peppermint or candy striping or coloring. It's got what was probably pearl. It's a little bit yellow now, but this interspersed red is very cute. Rounded with its own little black finial and tip at the end, and of course has a nice John Holland nib, which tends to at least have a little bit of flexibility most of the time. But this one's just a fanciful pen with colors, just to show you guys. So I was going to do these for fun. Well, it's all fun, but these just to kind of get some quick content out. But the other thing that I'll mention, and maybe I should have done it with a pen, but I will say, and I'll write this out so as I say it you see it. But I've got a couple things I want to mention. One, if you go up to the top of my YouTube page now, you'll see that I added a link, and I've already had one person actually go to it. I actually added a page for Buy Me a Coffee if I could do that right. And I just let my hands be a little bit dirty. But if you go to the top, coffee, there should be a link called Buy Me a Coffee. It is just a place for, if you like this content, if you feel like it's worth any bit of financial support, just for me to be able to keep making this content, in terms of, you know, putting some money not out of my pocket towards supplies like sacs or talc or an interesting new tool or something that helps me kind of work on pens and show you new things. It's a way to send me a few dollars here at a time, and it's one of those things. It's hard to ask for money, but I think I like to be consistent. I like devoting time to this, and you know, things aren't cheap and they're only getting more expensive. You know, sacs and diaphragms and little tools are only getting more expensive, as we all know that a lot of things are. So if you like the content, if you want to show any appreciation, I appreciate any little dollars you can throw at me, and I'll certainly be happy to mention your name and kind of show you where these funds go. But up at the top, the Buy Me a Coffee link. And then the other thing I'll say is, I need to tell you what my Instagram is. I am Kiwi Squirrel, because I'm going to actually do a little bit better job at, as I do these pens, as I do some other pens, I have my Instagram is nothing but this, really. It's nothing but like fountain pens. So I need to start showing some befores and afters and just kind of highlighting some pens that I'm working through off on the side. So if you want to do Instagram, just kind of follow me there. It's at Kiwi Squirrel. I think that's it. And just give me a follow and I'll follow you back, and you can kind of just see the stuff I do and some of the stuff I posted in the past. And then the last thing is, maybe bouncing off this, or even message me on this YouTube channel, that I've communicated with a few people, and this is something I think would be nice to do. I've been restoring some pens for a new collector, and I mean, they've shown their appreciation. They've kind of, you know, paid me for some services, traded for some services, and I kind of like the idea of, you know, branching out to say, hey, if you have a lever filler or a PFM, a piston filler, or anything that I've repaired on this channel, and you see that I'm doing it well, if you have a pen that you'd like to have restored, you know, be it a good polish, be it a full takedown and restore with, you know, like a diaphragm or a sac, with the sacs, the lever bars, stuff like that, reach out. Like I'd like to see if I can start doing a little side business, you know, for a reasonable price, comparable or maybe a little bit cheaper than what other like services would offer when that's what they do. I'd be doing this on the side for a little bit of a hobby, just for a little bit, again, some money to put back into the hobby. So I'm not trying to make a big business of it, but if you have something you want to send my way, I think I talked to one gentleman about doing some skylines, a couple for him if he decides to do it, because, you know, I could, you know, get every little finicky piece apart just so it's fully done. Think about it, you know, message me at Instagram at Kiwi Squirrel, or even on this, and I'd be happy to communicate with you offline. So just trying to monetize a little bit to invest back in. So before this gets too long, I'm going to go ahead and let you go, and hopefully get this particular Parker 51 pen up pretty soon, and then start working on the others, and I'm hopefully going to have some more time to do some of it. So thank you for sticking around. Sorry about the delay, and I will let you go because now I'm rambling.